You know that feeling when your wife walks into the room with that particular gleam in her eyes? The kind that usually means she's about to spend money we don't have on something we definitely don't need. Well, that Wednesday evening, Natalie practically drifted through our front door like she just scratched a winning lottery ticket. I was stretched out on the couch, debating whether to watch grown men throw a ball around or a reality show where strangers pretend to fall in love in 3 weeks. Neither option was exactly inspiring, but it was that kind of evening and I wasn't asking for much. "Babe," she practically shrieked the moment the door swung open. I swear the picture frames on the wall actually shifted. "You are not going to believe this." I grabbed the remote and hit mute, already bracing for impact. Last time she'd said those exact words with that exact energy, we ended up with a timeshare in Arizona that we visited exactly once, took approximately 400 photos of a pool we never swam in, and never spoke of again. I set the remote down slowly like a man defusing something. "Sophie just called," she went on, dropping her bag by the door and practically bouncing into the living room. "She's invited me on the most incredible girls' trip. She's rented out this gorgeous coastal resort for a whole week. Just the girls. Complete relaxation. Mimosas every morning, spa treatments every afternoon, dinners on the terrace every evening." She dropped down beside me on the couch, tucking her legs underneath her, her face lit from within. "When's the last time I got to do something like that? When's the last time either of us did anything that wasn't work and takeaway and trying to remember if we paid the gas bill?" She had a point and we both knew it. Between my job at the insurance firm, which had all the glamour the name suggests, and her work at the community center, which she loved but which paid accordingly, our idea of a proper getaway was dinner at the Italian place 2 blocks over and maybe a film after if we weren't too tired to stay awake through the trailers. "How much is this going to cost us?" I asked because I was a practical man married to a woman with an optimistic relationship with our joint account. "That's the thing," she said, grabbing both my hands the way she always did when delivering news she suspected I might not immediately celebrate. "Sophie is covering everything. She booked the whole resort and just wants her closest friends there to celebrate with her. All we need to sort is spending money." "Celebrate what exactly?" She blinked. "Does it really matter?" I thought about it for a second. "I suppose not." I had to laugh despite myself. Only Sophie Anderson Cole would spend what was comfortably my annual salary on a week-long coastal vacation just because her husband Daniel made the kind of money in finance that made ordinary people's eyes water. I'd met Daniel maybe half a dozen times over the years, dinner parties, a charity event, their anniversary due a couple summers back. He seemed decent enough, honestly. The kind of man who actually remembered your name the second time you met, who asked follow-up questions, who looked you in the eye when you were talking instead of scanning the room for someone more interesting. "So when exactly is this happening?" I asked. "Next week," she said, and she was already somewhere else in her head, mentally sorting through her wardrobe. The next few days were a beautiful, chaotic blur of shopping bags and tissue paper. Natalie bought new dresses in colors I didn't know the names of, new swimsuits in multiple configurations, sandals for every possible occasion. By the time she was fully packed, our bedroom looked like a department store had detonated in a controlled but enthusiastic explosion. Every surface had something on it. The floor had disappeared entirely. But she looked happier than she had in months. There was a lightness to her that I hadn't seen in a while, and watching it come back made the credit card damage feel almost irrelevant. Almost. The morning she left, she was electric. Practically vibrating with it. "You're going to have the absolute time of your life," I told her, and I genuinely, completely meant it. She threw her arms around my neck and held on for a long moment. "I'm going to miss you like crazy," she said. "I'll call every single night without fail." I carried her bags down to the car Sophie had arranged and watched it pull away, turn at the end of the street and disappear. My wife, off to paradise for a week. I had absolutely no idea that I was also watching my marriage go around that corner. No idea that she would come back carrying something invisible that was already quietly dismantling everything we'd spent years building together. For the first 12 hours, I lived the full unrestrained bachelor experience. Pizza eaten directly from the box while sitting on the couch I wasn't supposed to eat on. Socks left wherever they landed. A 6-episode run of a documentary series about men who restore vintage motorcycles in rural America, which I found deeply soothing in a way I couldn't explain. Then around 9 in the evening, without really noticing it happen, I started missing her laugh. The apartment felt bigger than it actually was. Quieter than I'd remembered it could be. My phone buzzed. FaceTime. There she was, my wife, glowing like she'd been lit from the inside, looking like she'd genuinely stepped off the cover of a travel magazine. Behind her was pure paradise. Turquoise water so clear it barely seemed real, palm trees bending in a perfect evening breeze, everything bathed in that golden late sunlight that makes ordinary things look cinematic. "Oh my God, babe, you have absolutely no idea," she said, turning the phone so I could take in more of the view. "This place is something else entirely. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up." "Looks like you're really suffering out there," I said, settling back with my beer. "Truly terrible. Very hard to watch." She giggled, the real one, the one that was slightly too loud. "We just finished the most incredible dinner. Fresh fish, candles outside on the terrace. And now we're heading to the beach bar. Sophie says the cocktails there are legitimately life-changing." We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing in particular. The food, the other girls, the absurd size of their suite. And when she hung up I sat for a moment in the quiet of the apartment feeling genuinely glad she was there. The next night she called again, looking somehow even more radiant. The sun had done something to her skin and her hair was loose and she looked relaxed in a way that took me a moment to place. The way she used to look before things got busy and tired and routine. "How's paradise treating you today?" I asked. "Oh, she said, and something in the sentence was slightly off, like a note played just barely flat. "Just girl stuff. Massages, lying by the pool, that kind of thing." Normally Natalie would give me a full account. Timestamps, quotes, minor drama, full emotional arc. It was one of the things I genuinely loved about her, the way she experienced things and then gave them to you whole. This felt different. Edited. Like a summary written by someone who hadn't quite been present for the day being described. "Come on, give me something to work with," I pressed, keeping my tone easy. "Any drama? Anyone do anything ridiculous?" She shifted slightly. "Not really," she said, and her eyes moved off-screen for a moment, tracking something I couldn't see. "Look, I should probably get going, we've got plans." Then I thought I saw it. A figure behind her, moving through what looked like a doorway. A man, I was almost certain of it. Just for a second, maybe less. I told myself I was being an idiot. Resort staff. A trick of the light. I went to bed and slept fine. The third night, the same routine. Gorgeous backdrop, glowing wife, answers that gave me nothing to hold on to. Except this time I was sure. He was there again. Same doorway or one like it. The shape of him, the way he moved, unhurried, familiar with the space. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice completely casual. "Was that Daniel in the background just then?" She blinked. Just once, just briefly, and in that half-second her face did something complicated before settling back into normal. "Oh yeah. He came by earlier to check that everything was sorted. You know what Sophie's like about logistics. She worries even when there's nothing to worry about." It made sense. That was absolutely the kind of thing Daniel would do. Make sure his wife's holiday was running perfectly, handle anything that needed handling. "Is he staying at the resort too?" I asked. "God, no." She laughed, and this time it was more like her actual laugh, easier and unforced. "This is strictly girls' time. He dropped in for an hour at most. He's probably back home by now, playing golf or reading about quarterly earnings or whatever it is he does when Sophie isn't watching." That settled something I hadn't quite realized was unsettled. "I miss you," I told her. "I miss you too," she said. But she was already angling the phone slightly, already looking somewhere to the side. "I really have to go, babe. I'll call tomorrow." The screen went dark. I sat with my beer and a feeling I genuinely couldn't name, not quite worry, not quite suspicion, just a low hum of something I couldn't locate. But what could possibly go wrong on a simple girls' trip to a beach resort? I finished my beer and went to bed. I was waiting in the airport arrivals hall with a handmade sign covered in lopsided hearts and stick figures that were meant to be us but looked more like crime scene outlines. I'd spent the previous day cleaning the flat top to bottom. Her favorite flowers were on the kitchen table. The wine was chilling. And in the oven was a lasagna that I had constructed with great ambition and moderate technical ability, and which had at least a 40% chance of being genuinely edible. When she finally appeared at the top of the escalator, my chest did the stupid flutter thing it had always done. 7 years together and it still did the thing. She looked incredible, tanned, easy, wearing a floaty white dress that moved when she walked. But instead of the running leap hug I'd been picturing, she walked over at a normal pace, pressed her lips to my cheek, not my mouth, and said, "Hey honey," in the tone of voice you might use to acknowledge a neighbor in a lift. Pleasant. Neutral. Appropriate for someone you see semi-regularly but don't particularly need anything from. "That's all I get?" I said. I made a sign. It took genuine creative effort. She glanced at it briefly. "It's really sweet," she said. The drive home was strange and quiet in a way that had texture to it. Wait. Natalie normally filled car journeys naturally and effortlessly. Now she sat with her knees turned slightly toward the window and checked her phone every 30 seconds with the focused attention of someone waiting for important news. "So," I said somewhere around the 15-minute mark. "Was it as incredible as it looked on FaceTime?" "Very nice," she said. This from the woman who had once given me a 45-minute detailed breakdown of a chain restaurant we'd been to for someone's work thing. Who had opinions about opinions. Who had never in our entire relationship summarized anything as, "very nice," and left it there. "Come on," I said. "Give me something. Any gossip? Any drama?" She turned from the window and looked at me and I caught it, just a flash there and gone. Something. Guilt maybe. Or something adjacent to it. "Nothing much happened," she said carefully. "It was genuinely just relaxing. Not much to recap honestly." Back at the flat I walked her through the whole thing. The flowers, the clean kitchen, the wine, the slightly risky lasagna. "Welcome home," I said. She gave a small, controlled smile. "You cooked." "Attempted to cook," I corrected. "Results pending." "I'm going to have a quick shower first," she said, already heading for the stairs. I heard the bathroom door close. Then a moment later the lock. A small sound, almost nothing. But she never locked it when it was just the two of us. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for a moment, not quite sure what I was feeling. She came back down 20 minutes later in her oldest pajamas and looked more like herself in some surface way, but still somewhere else entirely. Dinner was polite and strange. She picked at the food and made small talk about nothing. Afterwards she said she was exhausted from the travel and went up early. When I reached for her in the dark she went slightly stiff, a barely perceptible drawing inward, like a door closing very slowly but definitely closing. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling and tried to locate what I was feeling. Not quite fear. Not quite certainty. Just a knowledge, sitting somewhere below thought, that something had happened on that trip. There was a wall between us in that bed and I had no idea yet how thick it was about to get. A month. 31 days of living with a version of my wife who looked exactly like her, sounded like her, followed all the same routines, and was somehow behind glass. Present but unreachable. I tried everything I knew how to try. Flowers on a random Tuesday. Booking the restaurant she'd been wanting to try for months. The long Sunday walk along the canal, stopping for coffee at the place with the good pastries. Each time she engaged just enough, smiled just warmly enough, said just enough words, that I kept second-guessing myself. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe this was just what things looked like when the early brightness faded. But it wasn't that. I knew it wasn't that, in the part of me that knew things before I was ready to know them. And the phone. She had always left it face up on the counter, charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it went everywhere with her, always angled away, calls taken in the other room in a low voice. Just work stuff, she'd say, returning with the careful naturalness of someone practicing naturalness. Thursday morning, 5 weeks after she came back. I walked into the kitchen and found her at the table, both hands wrapped around a mug, staring into it like it contained answers. She hadn't heard me come down. I stood in the doorway and looked at the set of her shoulders, the redness around her eyes, the particular stillness of someone who has been sitting with something terrible for a long time and is finally approaching the moment of saying it out loud. She looked up. "We need to talk." 4 words. Every married person knows what those 4 words mean when they arrive in that tone of voice. I sat down across from her. My heart had already changed pace. She took a breath that shook on the way in and out. "I'm pregnant." 3 seconds. That's how long the world tilted in the best possible way. We'd been trying for months. Quietly, hopefully, not wanting to make too much of it in case it didn't happen. A stupid, involuntary grin started spreading across my face. "Are you serious? We're finally..." And then I saw her face. She wasn't smiling. She was sitting completely still, watching me, looking like someone watching something break and being unable to stop it. "Natalie." The cold came from nowhere, moving up from somewhere around my spine. "What's wrong?" The kitchen went very quiet. "It's not yours," she whispered. The room tilted. Actually tilted or felt like it did. "What did you just say to me?" "The baby." She was crying now properly, her whole face giving way. "It's not yours." Something in me went very, very quiet. "Then whose is it?" "Daniel's," she said. So quietly I almost didn't catch it. "Sophie's husband." And there it was. The thing that had been sitting in the house with us for a month, invisible, taking up all the air in every room. The bomb that had already gone off, that had already destroyed everything, and that I was only now, in this kitchen at this table, actually hearing detonate. Daniel. The man whose hand I'd shaken at dinner parties. The man who remembered your name. How? My brain had simply emptied out. The trip, she said, not looking at me. Sophie had to fly home, her father had a health scare. Daniel came to look after things, make sure everything was running. And one night we all drank too much and she stopped. She didn't need to finish. I could picture it with horrible, complete clarity. It was a mistake, she said. A terrible, stupid, awful mistake. I would take it back. I would do anything. Does Sophie know? I asked. She shook her head. No. It would devastate her. And what about us? I said. What about our marriage, Natalie? What about me? She finally looked at me fully, her face a wreck. I don't know if it can be fixed, she whispered. I don't know how to fix this. I didn't sleep that night. I tried every angle, counseling, time, some version of things where we rebuilt from the rubble. But every time I arrived at the same wall, the baby, looking at that child every single day, being reminded in the most permanent possible way of what she'd chosen. Around 5 in the morning I went downstairs and made coffee I didn't really want. Standing in the kitchen in the early gray light, something shifted. Sophie didn't know. She was out there right now living in exactly the same fool's paradise I'd been living in for a month. Trusting people who had sat across from her at dinner tables and said nothing. Before it fully felt like a decision, I had my phone in my hand. I waited until 8 o'clock. A minimally decent hour to deliver devastating news. Hello. Sophie's voice was warm and bright, the voice of someone whose morning was going completely normally. Hey Sophie. It's me, Natalie's husband. I paused. There's something I need to tell you and it's going to be really hard to hear. I'm sorry. Her voice shifted. What is it? Natalie is pregnant, I said. And the baby isn't mine. Total silence. I could hear her breathing, fast, shallow. I'm sorry, she whispered. What did you just say? The baby is Daniel's. They slept together while you were in Boston. What came down the line then was a sound I'll carry with me for a long time. Raw, unmediated anguish. Then she was whispering, "Oh God," over and over, very quietly. She was never going to tell me, was she, Sophie said, and her voice had gone hard. She was just going to go on being my best friend while she was carrying my husband's child. I honestly don't know what she was planning, I said. Where is he right now? The warmth was completely gone. Where's Daniel? I have no idea. Probably making toast, she said. Probably humming to himself. I heard something crash. Then Sophie's voice, entirely transformed, calling Daniel's name with a precision and force that made the hair on my arms stand up. Then the line went dead. Natalie came flying down the stairs 2 minutes later, flushed and furious. What did you do? She demanded. Sophie just called me in absolute pieces. You had no right. You're right, I said, standing up. It was your responsibility. But since you seemed perfectly comfortable letting her go on not knowing, indefinitely, someone had to. You could have let me handle it in my own time. Handle it how exactly? The version where Sophie never finds out and I raise Daniel's child as my own and we pretend none of this ever happened. She started crying. I felt nothing, which was its own kind of terrible thing to discover about yourself. This is going to destroy our friendship, she said. Good, I said, and I meant it entirely. It should be destroyed. Friends don't sleep with each other's husbands. That's actually one of the foundational premises of friendship. You want to know what cruel looks like? I said. Cruel is your husband finding out he's going to be a father, feeling genuinely, completely happy about it for about 3 seconds, and then being told the baby isn't his. Cruel is lying to your best friend's face for a month. Cruel is asking the person whose life you just wrecked to carry your secret indefinitely. That's what cruel looks like, Natalie. So what happens now? She asked, her voice gone small and flat. Now you live with the consequences of the choices you made. Now Sophie gets to decide what she does with her marriage. And now I get to figure out what's left of mine. And us, she whispered. I looked at her. 7 years. The woman I'd loved without question. And I felt completely, utterly empty. There is no us, I said. There hasn't been since you decided one night with Daniel was worth all of this. I grabbed my keys and walked out. The weeks that followed were exhausting in a quiet, grinding way. Notes on the bathroom mirror. Elaborate dinners left mostly uneaten. Suggestions of therapy, weekends away, fresh starts of various configurations. She even tried the guilt angle eventually. People are going to think you abandoned a pregnant woman. Anyone who knows the truth will understand, I told her. And the people who don't know the truth don't matter. She laid out her plan one evening in the calm, reasonable voice she used for serious conversations. We'd stay together, I'd raise the baby, we'd be careful about what we told people. She'd clearly thought it through. I tried to locate some version of myself that could do what she was describing, look at that child every morning, every evening, at every birthday and ordinary Tuesday, and not see that night at the resort. I couldn't find him. I can't do it, I said simply. I've thought about it and I can't. I called a divorce lawyer Monday morning. Straightforward in the end. I didn't want the flat or the furniture. I wanted my name legally off that birth certificate, and I wanted to begin the process of rebuilding something I could actually live in. That evening I sat her down at the kitchen table, the same chairs, and said it plainly. I want a divorce. The words went into the room and stayed there. You don't mean that, she said. We can find our way through this. People survive worse than this. Some do, I said. We won't. Some things are too broken to rebuild, and this is one of them. She cried. She bargained. She offered everything she could think of. I sat through all of it and felt the nothing where the feeling used to be, which was the saddest discovery of the whole thing. I've filed the papers, I told her when she finally ran out of words. And I've put a deposit on a flat across town. I'm moving out this weekend. Saturday morning. The last box. I loaded it into the car in the gray early light while Natalie watched from the kitchen window, hands around a mug, completely still. I remembered what she'd done. Whatever sympathy was left dissolved. I got in the car and drove away without looking back. 6 months now. That's where I am. The divorce was finalized last month. She kept the flat. I kept, as it turned out, the ability to sleep properly and look at myself in the mirror without flinching, which I would not have predicted would feel like such a significant thing to have held on to. Sophie and Daniel's split was considerably messier. Real money, real lawyers, things that dragged on longer than anyone wanted. Last I heard she'd moved to Edinburgh for a completely fresh start. Good for her. She deserved something new. The baby was born 3 weeks ago. A boy. Dark hair, dark eyes, the image of his actual father in a way that required no interpretation. Natalie had put my name on the birth certificate, which I understood in some way, the hope of it, the desperation. A DNA test clarified things without ambiguity. Daniel is the legal father paying child support. Natalie is raising the boy largely on her own. I see her around the neighborhood sometimes. She looks tired. Most of her friends have quietly drifted away, not dramatically, not in any declared way, just the ordinary movement that happens when something like this becomes known and people have to decide where they stand. She doesn't look happy. But she doesn't look like my problem anymore. Last week she sent me a text. 3 words, I miss you. I read it twice. Sat with it for 30 seconds. Thought about the kitchen table, the sign at the airport, the lock on the bathroom door, the month of glass between us, the ceiling I'd stared at. Then I deleted it without responding. There was genuinely nothing to say. She'd shown me who she was in the moments that actually counted. Some bridges once burned stay burned. Some trust, once broken, doesn't come back no matter how much time passes or how sorry anyone is. But self-respect. That turned out to be the thing worth protecting above everything else. The thing that survived when everything else didn't. I kept mine. Everything else was just stuff.